Promotional consideration paid for by the following. The Ohio Neck and Back Pain Relief Center, Scott M. Gray, D.C., across from the Marion Center between TSC and Kroger. For further information, dial 740-386-6580. Also located on the net at goodbackbadback.com.
You know what the greatest thing is about the exchange with Scott Spears? Well, not only do they have Scott Spears, but they got all kinds of fabulous guests, too. So tune in. The Exchange, Scott Spears, right here. Hello there, Soup here. Say, if you want to be really entertained, just tune in to The Exchange, starring my good friend Scott Spears, here on this station.
Hey, Scott Spears along with you on a Monday edition of The Exchange. As you can see, we are now into the Christmas holiday just a little bit, set partially decorated here with a few ornaments, a few Christmas trees here and there. We've got the lights behind us, Charlie, the touch of garland. It's on its way.
Chicken on the table.
Wait, that's Buckeye Cluck. We anointed him weeks ago when a fan... Is that what the fan sent that to you, Charlie?
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that. But we are in the Christmas season. It is just right around the corner. We've got a very, very special guest who's going to sit in with us during this week of episodes that lend her very brilliant and well-deserved opinion. Very excited to have her here. Going to talk about her in just 1 second. Not let the cat out of the bag just yet. We're going to start with Charlie Evers and his fascinating facts.
I almost hate to bring up the subject, but watching trains go through Marion sometimes can be very interesting. But I saw something this past week that is a mystery to me. A number of cars carrying what look like dumpsters, you know, the dumpsters that you see that they put all kinds of stuff in, they were covered with a canvas. And I just wonder what's under the canvas. Was it garbage? I hear that they are transporting garbage through Marion at times. Where it ends up, I don't know. Hopefully not around here.
I hope not.
Well, watch for those dumpsters.
Everything's tied back to the trains in Marion, right?
Yes, it is.
Charlie?
Always has been.
Terry Klein calls me and says, we got to get the trains out of town. Too much noise.
Or the whistles, yeah.
The train whistles. We got to clear all that up. Also, I can't remember if I mentioned it or not, but we've got Brenda Donegan sitting in for Marianne Michaels this week as Marianne's off doing other things in the community. Brenda won an award recently. Second year in a row, Brenda. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, the first one was in March. Both of them have been in the same year. It was the Primrose Corporate Employee of the Year Award. And then I received an honorable mention 3 weeks ago from the Ohio Assisted Living Association. And both of them were for my commitment to quality care and interaction with senior citizens in the area. So very humbling.
Perfect. And I think I just saw the statistics from the census, and it's something like over 30% of the residents in Marion are senior citizens now. We have a very high senior population.
Just 30%?
Is it higher than that?
I think so.
Wow, I know per capita it's a little higher than most.
Every day that figure's added to.
That's exactly right. Just keeps going up. But also every day it's decreased a little bit.
Well,
just reading
yes,
page 3 of the
especially
newspaper.
here lately.
Oh my goodness.
I don't know what it is. Maybe something in the air. Wow.
You know, this time of year does bring depression for a lot of people. We should talk about that later on in the week, how the holidays are sometimes some of the most depressed times for people, unfortunately.
But if you want to really be depressed, go to Nome, Alaska, where it's dark almost 24 hours a day. And,
That would
and
do
I've
it.
talked to people in Alaska, they say they get very depressed.
What is it in the sunlight that gives you energy?
Vitamin D.
Vitamin D. I
Yes.
knew it was something.
And in the wintertime, we don't get much of that, so we must supplement it with vitamin capsules.
Perfect. I teased you earlier on about our special guest. Now, before we let her into the picture here, this is a long time coming to the exchange. I've wanted her on for a long time. She's been on radio with me several times. She's always a delight. Went to the library today. There were only 2 people, by the way, this is a fact, 2 people in the Marion Public Library. When you go into the archive file, only 2 names have their own file. And this lady's one of them. I'm not even going to tell you who the other person is. You're going to have to go look. Go to the library. Check them out. They just remodeled. But it's this lady right here. And I retrieved this article from her file today. Withrow heads to Washington. This was in the Marion Star, November 29th, 1993. Hey, cat's out of the bag now. You definitely know who's joining us on the set. 40th Treasurer of the United States of America, somebody we're all very proud of here in Marion, Mary Ellen Withrow.
Well, it's fun to be here, Scott. November 22nd, which is today, is the anniversary when they told me I was going to get the job.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's when Lloyd Benson called me and said, you've got it. So then I had to go before the Senate and get approved by the Senate. But I always remember it because it's the same day that John F. Kennedy was assassinated.
We are taping this show on
Yeah.
November the 22nd. Mary Ellen, there has to be a story behind that. What all led up to you becoming the 40th Treasurer? Of course, that's a position you're appointed to, not elected to.
That's right. Well, it was a long time coming. It takes a lot of work to get to that point. And everybody has a different story. Every treasurer that I've talked to got there in a different way. The current treasurer is Rosie Riaz, and she was in real estate and worked very hard in Virginia for the president. And I had been involved with raising money for Al Gore, and I had been his honorary chair in 1988. And I became acquainted with him, and so we became friends. And he was a help to me, but everybody was a help to me, really. I mean, John Glenn and Howard Metzenbaum and David Wilhelm was the head of the DNC at that time. And everybody was working hard for me to get the position. There was another woman that was being considered, a woman from Colorado, named Polly Baca, and she had run for the Senate and had not made it. She was I don't know what she's doing now, but anyway, it was the 2 of us down to the end, and she was Hispanic, and it's usually held by a Hispanic woman. But I went and I talked to the top Hispanic person, and I said, "Is this something that you're after for your people?" And he said no. And so then things sort of went my way. Yeah.
For all those people out there who haven't quite got the civics lesson yet, or maybe I don't even know if it's taught, what does a treasurer do?
Well, each treasurer does their own thing. I sort of developed my position after being there, but my responsibility was the oversight of the Bureau of Engraving and Printing and the Mint. And then I marketed the savings bonds. But, and it was a lot of speeches, a lot of going out and talking about what Treasury wanted me to talk about, which they wanted me to talk about getting people to save money. And I would work that into all of my speeches, no matter where I was. And I realized that it wasn't making any effect on the adults. So I said, I'm going to talk to the children. So I started visiting the schools all over the country. When I would go to give a speech somewhere, I'd also visit maybe 2 or 3 schools in that area. And I would tell them about that even my 6th grade teacher, the FBI even visited my sixth grade teacher, and that would get their attention. I could just tell that that was something that they thought, oh, I didn't realize that would happen. And if they were in the sixth grade, it really made a good point for them. So it was fun to talk to the children. I talked to all ages. I mean, I even talked to kindergarten and all through college. And they, I think it had an effect because they were impressed with the fact I had my name on the money.
Well, you know something, Mary Ellen, it's kind of unique because I searched you on the internet. Of course, we and Marion don't need to know your background because we know it.
Mm-hmm.
But I searched you just for the heck of it, and one of the things that's attributed to you is one of the most visible ever U.S. treasurers. Why was that important to you?
Well, it was important because I was there to do a job, and I wasn't going to just do a job. And when I was thinking about that today, I went to the Bureau of Engraving and Printing and went through the first shift and had my picture taken with all of the employees. And they said, well, the second shift's going to be disappointed. So I went back for the second shift, had my picture taken with all of the employees, and they said, well, the third shift's going to be disappointed. So I went back at midnight and had my picture taken with all of the employees, and nobody had ever done that. And you have to have them on your side in order to get accomplished what you want to accomplish. And nobody still has ever done that but me. And then I did it out west in Fort Knox, or Fort Worth. I did the same thing, and that is a very interesting facility. That's a state-of-the-art facility. The one in Washington has been there a long time, but the one out in Texas is a lot newer. It was built in the 1980s, I believe, but it is one that they show to other countries when they want to show a place where we make money, and it's got a lot of space around it. It's very safe. Where in Washington we have to be very careful because it's so close. It's right beside the Holocaust Museum, and it's so difficult to keep it from anything happening there,
Well, I tell you, Mary Ellen, we've got a lot of, I don't want to hog the episode today because we've got a lot of people who I'm sure can jump in here and ask questions. But one thing I wanted to bring up was I interviewed you on the radio. You came back to Marion for your, which I don't think we need to hide the age because it was pretty well, do we need to hide the age, Mary Ellen?
No, it's very obvious what.
No, it's not obvious. It's not obvious. But for your 80th birthday, you came back to Marion, had a big celebration. It was a lot of fun. You came down and did an interview with me right after that, and I said, at 80, are you thinking about retirement now? And you said, no way.
No.
Why no retirement?
Well, I like to stay involved, and I have stayed involved. So things sort of come my way, and I think that's something that you should take advantage of. When you have a call that they want you to do something or be involved, you think about it and think, well, I think I'd like to do that. So that's the way I've operated.
And been very successful at it, successful working into your 80s. Before I let Brenda in here with a question, I did find another article in the file. I thought this was a great picture of you, Mary Ellen, in front of the bill there. We'll get it up on the screen here. It's not bad at all. Withrow follows tough act with a big $100 bill. Behind you look good there, Mary Ellen. That's a nice picture. I like that one. But there's a whole file, and I do implore people to go up to the Marion Public Library and take a look at Tracks Your Career back to the 69 when you ran for Elgin, first female on the Elgin School Board. Brenda, you've when I was going through that file today, I saw a few articles that you had written. So how did your relationship begin with Mary Ellen?
At Elgin. Our daughters were cheerleaders together, and at that time, parents had to be very involved in fundraising, and so we worked the concession stands together now and then. And I supported her all the way through as she was on the school board, and when she became Marion County Treasurer, I still supported her, and on to the state. And I don't know if she remembers this or not. It was such a big day, but the day she was sworn in, Ruth Kelly and myself, and this other lady, I can't remember her first name, but her last name was Gibson. We flew down for the day, and went over. Norm met us at Union Station. We went over to the Mint and spent the day, and we're there for your swearing-in ceremony. I've seen her several times since then, so we've just been ongoing friends.
Well, there was an article, interestingly enough, in that file that I looked at today about how many people from Marion came to your swearing-in.
Oh, yes. It was a big crowd.
How did that make you feel, that
Oh,
many
my.
people?
Oh, that was wonderful. They had chairs in there, and they said, you know, I don't think we've got room for these chairs. And so they took the chairs out, and everybody had to stand, and I think, if I remember correctly. And they said it was the biggest crowd since President Grant's swearing his inaugural ball.
You can't beat that. Charlie,
That's something.
did you have a question for Mary Ellen about the career?
I was wondering too, technically, on what basis can you print money? What do you have to have gold somewhere?
Well, we've got a lot of gold, but when we can print money is when we get orders from the Federal Reserve, and they have to have orders from the banks, and that's what creates the manufacturing of the money. We can't just do it.
Right.
But I've got a great picture. I wish I had it with me of when I went to West Point. We couldn't take pictures in Fort Knox, but I've got a picture in front of the gold at West Point. And we have a lot of gold, and they haven't sold it. I'm very glad they haven't, because it has been discussed. It was discussed during Bush's administration, I know, and it's the fact that it's like our checkbook, you know. I mean, our savings account, I guess would be better. Yeah.
Martha, you've been in Marion since you were a child. I'm sure you remember the ascent of Mary Ellen Withrow.
I sure do. Who could forget Mary Ellen Withrow? Everybody knows her.
I remember you going down the football field with the baton and all of the things you did too.
we have a lot of legends on the panel today, which makes for a lot of fun. And we're definitely going to have Mary Ellen with us through the remainder of this week here on the Exchange. And boy, there's sure no shortage of things to talk about going on in the world, which we will do. Holy moly, maybe she can help us save the money problem in the United States. If anybody knows about money, it's Mary Ellen Withrow. But as we celebrate this Monday, kind of looking back at your career, one thing I wanted to ask was, when you first ran for, well, first question, have you ever lost an election?
Yes, I ran for clerk of courts in 1972, and I lost. And that was so miserable that I said I never want to do that again. So I always would work very hard so I would win, because I didn't want to go through a loss again. Yeah.
Why is it horrible? For those of us who've never run for public office, why does that hurt so bad?
Well, I don't know. It's just a defeat that, you know, you don't like defeats, and it's demoralizing. I mean, you know, I just always feel sorry for people that lose, because I know how hard they've worked and how much they want to win, and you've got to give people credit for running for office. It's not the easiest thing in the world. So, you know, I really think we need to be proud of people that run for office.
Interestingly enough, the office you're most known for was an appointment, not an election. Which election was the hardest? Was it the one you lost?
No. From defeat purposes, but the hardest was the first time I ran for state treasurer. That was very hard against Bucky Reinhardt. He had a lot more money than I did, and he was, you know, the treasurer of Franklin County. I was the treasurer of Marion County, and that was a big difference. And it was a tough race, but I won.
What do you attribute your win?
Well, there were some instances. I didn't debate him, and he debated himself, and they said he lost because he made some mistakes. That didn't help him. He had some things that had happened in the County Treasurers Association that didn't help him have support from all the county treasurers. That was a problem. And but he was well known, and I wasn't. But you never know what you're going to deal with when you run for an office, because so many other things can affect it. You know, it isn't just what you do; it's what other things happens during that time. But I was, you know, I wasn't sure I was going to win at all, because I had 6 men running against me in the primary, and you know, I said that if I came in second all over the state, I'd win the primary, and I did. But like Jim Williams up in Akron he had radio at the last minute, and so he came in first in the Cleveland area where I had been first. So all of these things go on during a campaign, and you're never sure how it's going to come out, you know.
You know, interestingly enough, we talked about not wanting to retire. The last position that you held in government was United States Treasurer, but that's not something that you had the opportunity to run for again. It was, you know, at the end it was over. The last day, what was it like?
Well, it wasn't much fun, I'll tell you that. I was trying to get a truck to get my things out of the treasurer's office. I couldn't get them all in my car, and I couldn't get it until Monday, and this was on a Friday, and the Secret Service told me they would watch my things. They normally didn't do that, but they looked after my things until Monday so that nothing happened to them. But and then I had to go back a few times because I'd forgotten things, and I had quite a lot of things to bring home, and I didn't know what to do with them when I got them home, so I've stored them away. And now I still have them.
You mentioned Al Gore when you were talking about your career there. If Al Gore had been elected in 2000, would there have been a chance of your reappointment, do you think?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Pretty likely.
I think it's very likely, yeah.
So that night, during that election, of all elections, the one that stretched out, what was your feeling on that whole bit?
Well, I felt like the Supreme Court did something they shouldn't have done. I felt that it wasn't fair, Florida, what happened in Florida. And, you know, all of the votes weren't counted, so, recounted, rather. It was an unfortunate situation, but it was a very, very sad time for me, yeah.
You know, it's interesting. We talked about your appointment to United States Treasurer. How do you find out that you're not going to be returning? I mean, in your mind, I'm sure when it went Republican, you knew that it had come. Who tells you? How does that happen?
Well, the word comes down, you have to be out of here by January 19th. And you better be gone, because if you're not, you know. So it wasn't very nice, really. It was handled rather rudely, I thought. I don't know if it's always that way, but it was that way that year.
Brenda, you were working at the Marion Star when Mary Ellen was on this great ascent to become national office. What was that like, working in the media in Marion at that time?
Well, I have to say, Mary Ellen was always very gracious. Anytime that we called her for an interview or comments or whatever, she was always willing to support her hometown. Always very open and very honest. And while I'm speaking, one thing that I've always admired about people who are public servants is that their entire life and that of their family is placed in the public eye, and that has to be tough. How in the world do you handle that?
Well, it was, that's true. That is something that you have to deal with, and you handle it by, I guess the worst things are the bad advertising when you're running for. That's probably the worst. I would go out and walk around the house and think I didn't do that, and try to get over it. And yeah, it's all of that is very difficult. And Norman always told me, he said, you have to put on your alligator skin. And
Mary Ellen's going to stick with us. We're about done here on Monday. She'll be with us the rest of the week. Mary Ellen, though, I want you to think about this for tomorrow. Brenda asked a great question there about you have to build that thick skin up. What's the worst thing anybody ever said about you in an election? We'll get that tomorrow. There's a teaser to tune in tomorrow. Mary Ellen Withrow, Brenda Donegan, Martha Dousman, AC, Charlie Evers, all week here on The Exchange. Come back tomorrow.